quick little snippets of, hey, tips and tricks, things to learn, you know, kind of just sharing knowledge with the community. It's actually going to be led by F6, yours truly, the resident hashtag solo laner, not anymore, but he still acts like one, so I don't know what's up with that. But but yeah, let's actually go right into that if we could. What are we going to be talking about today here, F6?
We are going to be talking about essentially the basics of warding. And just like to back off or go with what Windu said, these aren't anything to like go into like fine detail of anything. This is for everybody to learn. It's like kind of just the like basic surface level understanding to increase the knowledge throughout the player base. So it's not going to be like we're going to be talking 5 hours about it, but it's something just to you could maybe come back to, just to look at and just get a better knowledge base of the game essentially.
I see. You have the stage, my friend.
Yeah, man. So essentially, we're going to learn how to ward today, guys. So I did create it, but with the help of the podcast and other individuals, we kind of just go through exactly what we're going to go through here, just like the overview, importance of warding, why it's important to ward, kind of how your wards kind of change throughout the early, mid, and late game, and just like a couple of tips and tricks just to kind of help you use your wards effectively, and just kind of close it out at the end. But first off, why wards are important in general. Wards provide vision, which is crucial for map awareness, tracking enemy movements, and preventing ganks. This is actually what we're trying to do with wards, right? We're trying to get vision and we're trying to understand where everybody's at, so we know if we need to press up on lane or retreat or just make a better play overall, or by like split pushing, right? So by placing wards strategically, you can gain valuable information, protect your team, and secure objectives. This is what we're trying to do, right? The name of the game is to collect more neutral objectives than the enemy team, and neutral objectives can be either the Fangtooth or Prime, or and consider even like towers, right? All the way to the core.
I mean, I would even put in there. I mean, it's a little more minute compared to those, but I would put in there the river buffs and cyan buff and green buff. Like those, those are neutral, objectives that can actually help put your team over.
Right. It's very like small little things that can potentially just build you up to win the game, right? And you can just get all this information by just correctly placing wards. So like in the early game, what we're going to talk about here, ward placements are crucial for protecting your jungle, preventing invades. So protecting your jungle essentially means like you could ward off the enemy jungler from stealing your enemy jungler's camp when he's not on that side of the map. Preventing invades, same essential thing there. Tracking the enemy jungler. This is very important because knowing where the jungler's at, I've talked to Beard about this a lot. Knowing where the jungler is at, pretty much you make a decision based off of that, because the jungler is the one person that's really not going to be in the lane too much, and people can't call missing. So like they could say missing mid, missing right, missing left, and you kind of like know where they're coming from. The jungler is kind of one of those people that like just all over the place, and you don't know where they're at all the time. So these wards are effective and helps, and overall enemy movement. So even if you do see the mid laner coming to your side, they say enemy missing, you at least see them on the ward to like, okay, now I really need to back. And like some key locations like warding phase, like river entrances. We talked about the river buffs as well, and just other buffs like the red buff, green buff, and the gold buff, and different jungle entrances from the enemy and from our side as well. And just a small tidbit, remember vision is power and knowledge. That goes a long way. If you understand where people are at, it allows you not to make the mistakes if you see them.
Right, and we got this image here with a Shimby heart in the background.
Shimby heart.
What do we see here?
So essentially you're going to see the little kind of key where like the orange kind of goldish is the dust side, where you kind of want to put your wards if you're coming from that angle, and opposite side as well as the dawn. The red is kind of the neutral factor, because the river is a neutral area where both teams want to ward essentially in the same places, and you're fighting over vision superiority. And as you can see here, it's kind of a little bit different for each side of the map. Over by the duo side where the gold buff is, you see that your wards are a little bit more fine-tuned towards the 5 camp and right where the 5 camp stairs are at. And over for the dawn side, you actually are warding the 3 camp and more towards where that underneath cut is coming from the jungler. A lot of times on the blue side of the duo lane and vice versa, The reason why you kind of ward separately other than just the river is because the jungler can take two different paths. He can go on the river or he cut underneath the objective and still gank you. So you kind of want to have vision for both of those sides coming in, because if he goes through the river and you don't have a ward there and just underneath the cut, then you won't be able to see him. So you want to get vision on both sides there, and you should be able to. The number of wards here are 5 or 6 on each side. If all the laners, hopefully we're hoping, right, everybody's warding, if all the laners are able to ward these spots, you should have vision to where you don't get gank or you see the gank incoming, so you're able to retreat and make a better decision in your place.
Now the mid game.
The mid game, it's a little bit different. So as the game progresses into the mid game, ward placements become more focused on objectives and controlling key areas such as Fangtooth and or Prime and the enemy jungle entrances. These wards will provide your team with necessary information to make informed decisions and secure objectives. So we're switching into the mid game here. We're a little bit more worried about like the Fangtooth and the or Prime. Obviously, the first Fangtooth is more roughly like 6-7 minutes into the game, depending on when you guys can take it. But when we're fighting for that second Fangtooth and going over to the second mini Prime, this is where we're kind of switching our wards. You'll notice that we're not necessarily warding the fog walls as much. We're actually focused more on the meat of the jungle, because we want to know where enemies are coming from. So if we want to pull Fangtooth, we want to be able to ward the entrances where they're going to be coming from the enemy team. So you see where like we're warding the stairs where it comes into the jungle camp. We're warding the objective itself to see if they're on the objective, and we're warding, like, now we're pushing the wards a little bit deeper because we're assuming we're having T1s down at this point, and the support and like the offlaner are able to get these wards a little bit deeper into like the red and the blue buff jungle, so you can actually see when they're rotating towards you a lot earlier, so you can either like, hey, we're going to finish this objective, or we're going to kind of peel off the objective and we're going to go into a team fight here and take that fight, and the enemy doesn't know we're going to be taking that fight because we have vision, we have the knowledge they're coming in before they know if we're fully completely doing this buff, and these wards are going to help you make that decision, either fight right there or turn and burn, you know.
Nice. Then late game.
And then late game, it's not too different, but in late game your ward placements become even more critical, right? Because this is where, like, in Pred, the late game, you could win one team fight and essentially win the game, even if you're completely losing. And it goes the same thing if you're completely winning, right? So the fact that you have that, it's going to be very important that you have these wards out. There's a lot of times where I know you guys see in your games too, there's not enough wards, and we don't know if like we're doing the Fangtooth or if they're doing Nora Prime. But warding around the enemy base, neutral objectives, and high traffic areas is really the important part. During this phase can help your team catch enemies off guard, set up ambushes, and secure game-winning objectives. And that's essentially what you want to do. And then once we go to the next slide, you can see that like the wards are a little bit deeper. You're kind of warding right behind the jungle entrance coming into the blue and red camp a little bit deeper, because if you can see them coming in, you can stay behind like an objective wall and just kind of like, okay, they're coming in, we're going to stay behind a wall as a team and kind of just get these guys as they come in, pick them off one or two at a time, and then that way we have the numbers advantage into coming into this objective. And now that most of the time it's going to be the support you're picking or the jungler, because they're trying to peek first, and if you're able to get that pick, you're able to secure the objective because you guys have the numbers in that fight, and more than likely the enemy team is just going to have to kind of forfeit that objective or int and go in there, and you guys kind of just turn on that single player.
All right, with late game, I want you to explain this to me, F6.
Okay.
There, with late game, you have a winning side and a losing side most of the time.
Right.
What are the benefits of ward placement on a winning side? What are the benefits of a ward placing on a losing side?
Okay, so the benefits are essentially the same, but it kind of just differs a little bit. So for the winning side, the fact that you have vision now gives you a little bit more confidence into like, yes, I can take this objective, because from what I see on the map, based on my wards and based on the minion wave, because also fun fact, the minion wave is a free ward. It allows you to see the enemies, right? And that's why you push lanes up before you try and do an objective. But back to where you're saying, but for the winning team, the fact that you have vision, knowing where the enemies are, you're like, okay, we can for sure take this objective, or like, hey, this other person, the jungler's on the red side of the map when we're trying to do or prime, and vice versa for the opposite side. So that way we're like, okay, the jungle's not here. We're already big enough to take a 4v5, and especially if the smite is not there with their team, they can't steal this objective, right? Because if it's jungler versus jungler, it's a 50-50, even if it's a losing team. But knowing that on the winning team is just fantastic, right? And then for the losing team, you know they're on an objective. You're not trying to go to take this objective because you're losing and you're kind of down bad right now. Your power level is not the same as the winning side. So if you know they're taking an objective, you kind of like, okay, we need to group up. They're taking damage initially from the objective, and we could come in since we know where everybody's at and they're all at this objective. One, if you have a Shinbi, they can split push, right? And you guys can take a 4v5 fight because they're taking so much damage from these bigger buffs like the Big Orb Prime or the Primordial Fangtooth. They're going to be taking damage. That gives you the advantage in the fight. And if you're able to use like a good team fight tactic of like, hey, we need to pick off the lowest first in the back, or we need to take out the jungler, you guys are able to put yourself in an advantage knowing that where people are at.
You know how many times I've gotten bamboozled because I'm like, we got a ward there. They're fighting it. Give it a few seconds. That's primal. Let them melt. Let them get melted. Let them get nice and toasty. And then we run in. Everybody's full health. Like it's just the Chimera regenning his ass off, right? And it's just everybody's full health. It's like abort! It's only two of us. Back up.
Yeah, Chimera is one of those guys that could just sit there at the objective. But I mean, at the same time, if you guys are able to like take out their major damage dealers, which are most likely on the front side of the pit, or maybe take out their CC, like if they have a Richter, right, he's probably going to be zoning a little bit more or a steal than actually being on the objective. And if you're able to take out their key player of like being able to stop you from initiating on all these damage dealers, you guys should be able to blow up like the carry or the mid laner, right? And then that from there, you're turning the fight onto the jungler. And if you time it right, because you have the vision knowing when they start it, like, hey, they can't burn this in 2 seconds, right? So having that vision there gives you the time frame and making sure you're understanding like where the enemy is moving to. I hope that answered your question, Bearded.
It does. Perfectly. Okay. Thank you.
Cool.
Right, now going into
tips and tricks. Yeah, so like wall hacks, I just call this wall hacks because trying to position your wards near walls to confuse the jungler with a sweeper. Essentially what I mean by this is if you place your wards closer to the wall, exactly where you're trying to ward, a lot of times they'll come in, they'll sweep, but the fact that they're not looking at their mini map to see the ward actually,
they walk right by it.
They walk right by it. You have the ward there, and they're just like, "How did he know? I just swept. There's a ward. There's not a ward here, right?" It's just because you hit the ward behind a wall. You're still able to get vision, and using that is going to be able to help you at least just be a little bit smarter, especially if the jungler's not as keen as you are. And also, you could place wards over certain walls by just either running up to the wall, and it'll kind of clip over it, like maybe warding the 5 camp or warding the 2 camp. Or even warding like the Fangtooth. You could also just jump a little bit and you'll be able to ward over it and you won't put yourself in a bad position. I see a lot of people are like, I have to ward this. I'm going to go run into front of the pit with the 5 people there. No, you could simply just do a little hop and skip, place the ward over. You guys can get vision and at least be able to make an informed decision on what you guys are trying to do. And ward timers, they get longer the more you level up.
This is something I didn't know. I did not know this until we were working on this together. I'm like, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, right. There's a little bit of information for everybody, like even veteran players, right? So like if you look at the actual ward itself, even the sweeper, it gets longer per level. So you can use this to your advantage. So therefore, like placing your initial level 1 ward is sometimes not the ideal situation. Maybe waiting until you hit level 2 is also a big team player. If you place your ward at level 1 at like the minute mark, your ward actually disappears before the river buff and you don't get key information from it. If you wait till level 2, you place your ward. Jungler's not going to gank you level 1. If he does, I don't know why they would do that.
In the bag.
It's spicy.
But if you place it level 2, you'll be able to see if the jungler, especially if you're using the ward graph we just posted up there, you'll see if somebody's rotating from the river buff, which is most likely the enemy jungler or the mid laner. They're like, oh, I just got river. I already pushed my lane up. I'm going to rotate to a side lane. That's going to help you out as well because you have your level 2 ward place down there. It'll at least give you information going through that. And then If you don't know, sweepers are loud as hell. They can be heard through the fog wall. So if you're trying to be a jungler trying to gank and you're sweeping at the same time, and if the enemy's close to the fog wall, they can't hear you. So be aware of that. But also, if you hear the enemy jungler sweeping, just know there's a ganking coming. Just back off, give it a second or two, and kind of just go back.
Okay. No, the timing is key. The ward timers, that's all done by level. So as you level up, your ward lasts longer. Yes. So if I'm a level 3 and my opponent's only a level 2, my ward's going to last longer than their